All right. Hey guys, welcome to this video. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm here with my dear sisters, Kandice and Jess, and we're just going to share a lot of things today, but primarily talk about some of the energies that we've been experiencing and how we've been kind of navigating those energies and what they look like, I think, which is kind of has a main theme, but I'm sure we're going to branch out into many different themes. I'm a little woozy from the energies, so it's a little bit of that slowing it down. Jess said, you said earlier, the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
We've kind of been in this mad flow, literally, like tornado, go the last 2 days, I would say, right, girls?
Yeah.
And we've been kind of bouncing back off of each other, pinging, as we like to call it, about all of the, it's like beyond synchronicity. It is kind of what you were talking about a minute ago, Kandice, about, and Jason Estes had mentioned it. We were talking about it simultaneously, and then he had a pop up and we're like, yep, there it is. And it's basically, we're calling it bleed throughs into the three of our realities and multidimensionality, other realities, dream time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys want to, I know Kandice, you're looking for some gene key relevance. I mean, the bleed through is like,
I think it happens when, I mean, maybe you mentioned this, but the three of us talk almost daily. And so having that connection with other people where you're intentionally setting that space, it's just happening now. It's just naturally happening. So I feel like that's part of it, is because we've come together in like an intentional portal or
intention. Thank you.
Right? It's intention.
Yeah.
It's not happening with everybody, but it's happening with people that are, in that space with you.
Yeah, so I've got goosebumps. So that's obviously where we're gonna head with this. We've kind of created this interconnectivity, like we talked about before, like a braid. And I always think of when two or more gather, it's like this double, triple team energy, and it's like we're fusing together through our experiences and sharing those experiences. And just your power is asking questions. And Kandice, you're always so, I always go back to when we first met and you were like that little butterfly fairy in all things, pulling them all in, right? Tinkerbell. And it's just now such a common thing. It's normal for us, but it's still so uncanny at times. It's just kind of mind-blowing. But also I see it happening on a collective level as well. Obviously, if Jason's talking about it and other people are talking about it, it's happening.
Totally.
I think we've strengthened that through our connection, intentional, like you said, Jess, our intentional connection. And I think being in the same, we all have similar wavelengths, essentially. We vibe. But we each have a different way of bringing it to this round table, right?
Yes. I'm getting so many things I want to share.
I know, me too.
So as you're saying intentional, I was hearing inter channels, like the channels of water that are leading into the main channel. And before that, I was seeing hallways and our doors opening up into these hallways. So it's just like, kind of like even a leaf that has many veins. It's like there's just this opening and this unifying, even though in the one leaf the different veins are going in different directions, they all bleed through into the one stem that goes into the plant. So I feel like somehow in our portions of the plant they're becoming more interconnected and more interwoven in kind of mysterious ways, in like these unassuming ways that are so mysterious and seemingly spontaneous, but actually very natural and very, like, if we want to get into it, very scientifically explainable. But if you're, you know, if you're in the present moment, really in your moment, it's when your realities make these synaptic connections, it can feel very euphoric. And it just feels like I'm a part of something. It's like everything just coming to get you and remind you that you're part of this group, and you just get this tingle or this feeling of being one with all. And so there's little reminders of that all over the place that are just so, again, they're mysterious and they're magical, and but also fully explainable in a way.
Yeah.
And I love, it reminds me of what you're saying, Kandice. It reminds me of when I encounter something, or you or any of us, when I clear it within myself, it's also for you two, or because, and same with you guys, with me. And so we do start acting as kind of like one. And so, yeah, that's been super trippy to follow that flow.
Oh, the following the flow.
Yeah.
When the flow has so many branches and it all comes back to, I was hearing aqueducts when you were talking about, but like the water flowing, and I was seeing aqueducts, and it never ceases to amaze me, but at the same time, it's almost like now it's become, and so I guess maybe giving a little background for anybody watching this is like, what the heck are they talking about? Which is pretty normal when I'm doing a video. Most people say that. What the heck is she talking about? But I will say this, I want to kind of go backwards for a moment, because we've connected and made this so. And we've had these connections. Like I was talking about my friend Sadithra a little bit ago, who I originally had a connection like this with, childhood friend. And we've kind of established that, and we don't talk very often. And it just comes up when we talk, we're like, whoa, we've had a lot of synchronicities. But I want to add to that as well. I've been part of other connections, and those have happened too. Little things here and there, big things. What we've done is kind of established by our intention, like you were saying, Jess, I feel we've established this bubble to work within, this medium. And what you were saying, Kandice, it's like you're, when we clear one thing, we're clearing it for the group, and we're doing that for the collective. Like a lot of, we're all doing this, and we don't necessarily realize it. But by us making this connection and really having similarities that brought us together, right? So a lot of similarities, like to the point where we're like, whoa, this is weird, to begin with. And then building on that, and that bleed through that comes out, I see it as basically timeless as well as dimension, like it's through all the dimensions, and it has this ripple effect in our reality. And so example, like we'll give some tangible examples. Like, I don't know if you want to share a tangible example, Jess, and kind
of like how it's come up in our life.
Yeah. Anything that pops up for you. There's so much, I know, but just for a background for anybody watching this.
No, I love that. So, sometimes I feel like one thing that will happen in our group chat is that there will be a common theme happening for all of us. Like it'll be a relationship theme or an emotional theme or even a dream theme. And it'll tie into our actual like waking life. And it's happening for all of us. And when one person brings it into the container, it then brings the awareness of it. Well, actually, we could talk about the communication things. I feel like that was an interesting one, where it was like, of course, me and my questioning, I bring this thing about like communication that I am noticing in my life to the container. And then Carrie and Kandice both brought how that was showing up in their life. And it brings awareness to the other people in the container. And then I guess you could say the transformation starts happening. It's like it's almost like a catalyst. And that's just one example of like, yeah, just, it's like, it almost feels like we plant these seeds in the container and then they just go, like they just grow really fast and then they ripple out into our lives. So it feels like a kind of like a tornado. That's what I see in when I think of what we've created.
Well, it is, it's a spin, right? It's a toroidal field, and it's actually like, dare I say, in our own version of reality. I mean, it's our own version of reality.
Yep.
It's almost like, I mean, I could go into so many different layers, and the synchronicities become, it's not like, you know, it starts off, oh, I saw this. So for example, your animals, Jess,
yeah.
You know, and then I was dreaming about that animal. And then, but and each of it has a different meaning for each of us. But as we explore what that means for each of us, we then weave and thread together all of the connection points that then you'll ask a question and I'll think to myself, that's a really good question. I wonder what that looks like for me. And then I will recognize that it's not necessarily identical to yours, but here's where it does fit. And then we weave together this particular set of synchronicities and how they're applicable to not only our lives, but what's going on in the collective. And like Kandice, you always bring in the gene keys and you're like, oh, you're seeing, I'll be seeing 4s and 8s. Well, I always see 4s and 8s, but certain animals will relate to certain gene keys or astrology. And you're like, oh yeah, we're going into this. And then it's not just about the astrology, like the bear. Oh my goodness. The bear was like a theme for a whole month.
By the way, Carrie, this is a great example. My sister gave me a pair of peacock earrings today. Anyway. So
I want to share, I'm sorry, Kandice, I just want to pop and share that really quick before I'll let you rock it. Open up the mic. So yesterday, this is an example of what Jess is talking about. So yesterday I was doing some shopping and I was running some errands and peacock was coming up for me. So I pay attention to everything within my environment, whether it's license plates or, and eyes, the eyes were a thing. So which a peacock has all these eyes on its feathers, right? So I had left a message for the girls in our chat room when I was grocery shopping. And I just said, hey, I'm just seeing peacocks everywhere. And I'm recognizing that this is something that's coming up for me and generally, or it's a sign for a future collective experience. Sometimes I'll experience it before the collective does from my perspective because of what I do and what we all do. Long story short, peacocks everywhere. Then next to me was a truck that had an eye on it. The girl that was at the checkout counter had all kinds of eyes on, like necklace, earrings, bracelet, ring of the eye. People call it the evil eye, but I've seen it in meditation and it's a level of awareness. And then that bleeds through into, as you said, Jess, now your sister gave you peacock earrings, which is crazy. And I had a peacock I was holding in my hand. I was like, not a real one, but a glass one. I was like, this is a gift. It needs to be for somebody. I don't know who yet, but it's this theme that now has come through. And this is probably another layer of what's happening in the collective next.
Yeah.
And it represents spirituality in a nutshell. So I'll just go into that. And many eyes, and it came up in my conversation too with my friend Sid today. Ironically, she was talking about reflection and the mirrors. And I was just like, ooh, that has something to do with peacock. And then, I mean, we could go on and on.
It's almost a daily thing for us. I mean, it's powerful.
And it's constant. Now, so then the thing is, how do you thread it all? So anyways, but Kandice, what were you kind of tuning into there with your mad scientist?
Yeah.
Over there on the computer.
Yeah, well, I have to look up gene key 64 because that's the peacock, right? And I was like, oh, I wonder if there's another animal that's been showing up in my life that's associated with the peacock. This is just how we play, right?
And the horse.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. okay, so I'm not going to go there. Where do I go? I was thinking about when you were talking, Jess, and just an example of our synchronicities would be the grasshopper. You had a dream of a grasshopper, and then Carrie had a real life experience of a grasshopper, the most magnificent grasshopper I think I've ever seen.
Isn't it beautiful?
Right? And you took a picture of that. And then I wasn't even expecting it to show up in my life at all. I was just like, oh, that's really cool. And then I'm working in the garden today, and I'm getting really, really low down deep in the roots of my cabbage. And there's this bright green little grasshopper. And I have never seen a grasshopper in my garden. I was like, what? This is so cool. This is so awesome. And that's gene key 35, which is such an exciting key. It's like when there's literally no hope, there's no possibility of, you just can't see your way out. It's just like everybody's like, we're doomed. There's one in the group that holds the wormholes to miracles, which is literally like the way out in spontaneous creation, like instant, just makes a way. Like it's just the way that it's a miracle, right? It's just, that's when we say that's a miracle. And it's the wild card. That's something that I love to always remember. It's like the wild card can always be pulled by creation, in reality, and you never know when it's going to get pulled. So don't ever give up hope, and don't ever feel like it's been decided and it's been cemented, because that wild card.
I love that. And it's funny because I hadn't seen a grasshopper in quite some time. And I just took a picture of it like a week ago, less than a week, and thought I have to see. And it wasn't like it was on the ground. It was up on top of this like wall,
Wow.
like at my level, so I couldn't miss it. And I'm like, I have to take a picture of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was ironic that you showed that picture. And I'm like, well, here you go.
Awesome.
So the wild card, and basically don't give up hope.
Yeah. And the vision key for that one, which is like the highest aspect and expression of this energy that we're talking about, is Quetzal, the Quetzal bird, like Quetzalcoatl sort of thing, right?
And so for me, that threads in with Kundalini. Everything's threading into with Kundalini right now for me, but it's interesting though that we're talking about. So we could take all of these and break down each one, but ultimately, and that Kundalini is just, I'm seeing that wave. It's like stay, with grasshopper, I was saying patience, young grasshopper, right?
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Patience.
Yes. Yeah.
And
I was
gonna say, just like if it comes in for one of us, like for me, for example, grasshopper means something for me, but then for Carrie, it was a different meaning. And so it's like, and another thing came through in my dream, which was uranium, which I didn't know, URA came through. And I was like, I don't know what this means. I almost didn't share it with you guys. And then you guys are like, oh, no, like this is something huge. And then it ended up being something for you two. So it's not always just for us. It comes through for the group.
And that's something too, like you said, when we're doing this, we're healing for each other. It's just like when you're working with someone in a healing session, so to speak, we'll have messages that come through that are not necessarily, they are for the client that we're working with, the other individual, but they have a double meaning.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're for us just as much. And that's why we call it an energy exchange, right? We're exchanging information.
Yep.
So we're creating this exchange between the three of us that's literally creating more juice and a bigger foundation and a more expansiveness to all of the symbols, because even though it might mean one thing for me and it might mean something different for you, as soon as I think about that other meaning, I start to associate it with other things and it still becomes relevant for me.
Right. Yeah.
I have to
I
pause
gotta
just
add-
for a minute.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so I wanted to share for you two more about the grasshopper. So I'm just looking at the two keys right now. Every gene key has a programming partner. On the wheel of the key, it's the exact opposite key that is its programming partner. So the exact opposite key to 35 is 5, which is timelessness.
Of course.
Right? So with gene key 35, the shadow level is hunger, right? This insatiable hunger.
Mhm.
And as we move up as we move beyond just consuming, where we go into the level of adventure, where we just let that drive take us somewhere, we follow it, right? And then as we follow it and we rise it to the highest point, it's boundlessness. And that's how you access miracles, when the adventure has become this unbridled, spontaneous energy that you listen to and you follow. So you can have access to things other people don't, because you've literally just become attuned, a conduit to all of the hallways. You're the door opener because you've opened and you've listened and you've let that lead you. So then in the 5th gene key, which is its programming partner, the shadow level is impatience, right? Like impatience.
Wow. Wow.
And then the
This
gift
just makes us
frequency.
giddy.
Because this is the funnest way to work with the keys. You don't have to know anything about them. You let them show up in your dreams, and then that is how the wisdom speaks to you and through you.
Yeah.
So right now, I would say, we all have prophetic dreams. We all have powerful dream speak, but right now we're sort of, at least I feel, we're using kind of Jess's channel. Her dream channel is really speaking to the group. So I would say that all of our dreams are very important, but there's almost like a focal point on you right now, Jess, with your dreams. Like your dreams are somehow initiating us into our next sequence. So I'm like, okay, when Jess has a dream, it literally goes a domino effect. It goes through us. It's like, and then there's stuff happening and showing up in our lives. We don't have to look. It's just there. Just open and see, and it's there. And the same thing with your questions. You ask a question, and I'm just like, oh, here it comes. And you do it in your pure, honest curiosity. And then Carrie and I are like ready to go. We're like, swing bada bada, or like, you're hitting it and we got our gloves. Like, we're just in this game.
Yeah.
And it's like, bring it on. That's kind of, Carrie and I are bring it on. And I'm noticing you're a very big initiator.
Yeah.
In your question asking and in your moving of your energy, which is very line 3. So as we move from impatience into patience, right? We're patiently waiting for the next activation, the next initiation, wherever that comes from. In that, we move, once we've really, really activated our patience, which is essentially trust. We're trusting in the timing.
Yeah.
We're trusting in the timing and the flow. We move into timelessness. We're now experiencing time in a totally different way, which is what we've all been bobbing and weaving in and out of.
Yeah.
We're not
everywhere.
Yeah.
So awesome.
What's popping in as I'm listening to you, Kandice, I don't know why, but I'm just gonna toss it out there, initiate this one. Something around the 3. I just keep seeing the number 3. Like, what is it about the 3 that makes this more? And I'm actually just asking, what is it about the 3? Because Carrie, I've heard you speak about this before, and you too, Kandice. But it's different than 2. It's very different than 2.
Mhm.
Because when I'm working with a client, for example, or even just like a partner, there's only so much. It's almost like what I'm seeing is a three-legged stool.
Mhm.
And like a two, there's something that two can hold, but three can actually hold something much bigger.
Okay, I'm drawing
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm hearing three makes a circle. One can stand in center and the other two can create a pole and literally create the sphere. It literally forms the circle and it forms the angles. It forms the triangle and it forms the circle. And it's the Trinity. It's, and we can each take whatever position in that. And then now I'm hearing 3 is also 9.
Yeah.
Because we have those trinistic aspects in our oneness. We multiply in that energy.
It's 3 and 3. You're doubling at 3, 6, 9. It's all of those
Right.
too.
Nikola Tesla just popped in.
Yeah. Well, time has been a big subject with all of us, right? Like time just in general. Like I'm kind of in that time travel obsession right now.
Yeah.
The opposite of that right now.
Well, it's so interesting because Carrie is, like, I like to say that she's a long forecaster.
Yes.
She can forecast and project out from within herself. Like, as I say, project out, it's like that's how deep within herself she can go. So she doesn't just access that for herself. She can somehow triangulate and access that for whoever she's reading. So it's just kind of like people who want an immediate, and she can do that too. I want an answer for next week. She'll give you one, but don't just take it for next week because it's probably going to be relevant and be unfolding for the next 5 years.
Yep.
I just had somebody I worked with a year ago and she's like, I just had, it was funny. And she's like, it's anyways, I'm just.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to get to know each one of you as you get to know me. And then I get to know myself even more through getting to know each one of you. And then how I see you both getting to know each other, as me viewing you guys and how you guys, right? Like there's so many dynamics here that create this like self-knowing generator that is constantly giving back to each one of us in ways that we could not even like anticipate. Yeah. It's always mutually beneficial, but then
I have to pause again just for a second. I'm sorry. I think somebody's at my.
It's like all the hands of time.
Sorry, Kandice, you were saying you're creating a clock, all the hands of time, and also the circle and the triangle.
Well, when Jess was like, "What's up with the 3?" This is what I drew. So first I'm like, okay, 3. And then I'm like, okay, we make a triangle. And then, 1 in the center, 1, say that's 2 outside, aligned, creates, it creates the circle. As you spin around, you create the circle, and you also create all the hands of time as you move around. You create the 360 view. It's also the cauldron, right? Like we've created the cauldron that we cook within. It's the cauldron. It's the, that's the 3 hairs. And there's definitely something very ancient and timeless about the wisdom of the power of 3. Mm-hmm.
As we're talking about this, I just want to say we wanted to kind of bring this to the table because it's almost like we wanted to share, I think, if we're not just here like reveling in our interactions, it's literally the way that I think we're supposed to all interact. Mm-hmm. This is a normal way of interacting with people that you're on the same wavelength with, I think.
Yeah.
And so there's no, it's why we're drawn to some people. And it's beyond it's going back to what you're saying about timelessness. I feel strongly that this is the new way that we're supposed to be interacting in this time, because we're not interacting with time in the same way. It's Jess has the dream. I might be seeing it in another aspect, and then she reminds me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I saw grasshopper last week, and I didn't pay attention, and now it's bringing it up again. And it's almost like the clock that you're talking about, Kandice. This becomes a triad. I just went into like triunification triad. I'm going to just go into really quick flow. The words that I'm hearing coming through. A triad of an inner celestial beam of consciousness that puts us on a trajectory of a higher coordination with accountability, which has to do with counting, and it has to do with certain set calibrations that allows us to kind of lock in and harness, I'm hearing lock in, harness these other aspects of not only ourselves, but of higher consciousness.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so I don't want to creep anybody out by saying this, but I'm going to say it. That's the all-seeing eye.
Oh my gosh, I almost just said, all eyes on you.
I know.
I didn't want to interrupt and keep going, but I was like, all eyes on you. All eyes on you.
Well, and that's the flow that you had coming up the other day. And I kept hearing that too, but the Tupac song, All Eyes on Me. So I don't even know if I shared that, but in the center of this triangle is a gathering point of energy, right? So imagine we're putting our energy into the center of that triangle, and then now it is beaming out into all directions like a prism, I guess.
It's just
So now
I want to draw too now.
I know. I'll draw. This is fun.
Well, and then and then we put a circle around it, right? It's the geometry. And as Carrie was talking, like it creates the calibration. It creates, right? The calibration, the celebration, the cauldron.
Yeah.
What's okay? I'm gonna look this word up.
I'm thinking of the alchemy symbol too, which is all of that, right? Well, there's a square in there too, but
yeah.
Well, it's all nested into each other.
To be square,
right? I know,
because we're getting to the root.
Yeah.
The square root.
Oh my god.
Oh. And I'm just gonna say it because it's super cheesy. I am rooting for you.
Oh my god.
But like that is part of our square root, right? That is how we work so well together, because we truly are rooting for one another.
Yeah.
Right? Like we are rooting, and I'm saying play on words. There's a deeper meaning to this. We are truly rooting for one another, which is the environment of the soil for our greenhouse that we're growing. I'm all about the plants right now. Okay. Oh. Calabria is in Italy, and URA was also in that vicinity.
Oh yeah.
So we're getting pulled to that area. So
yeah.
I'm gonna, yeah.
Oh, we can go into so, and that was another perfect example, Jess. You were like, I don't know if I want to talk about this. And I immediately, Kandice had already looked it up, and I was like, I'm going in.
I know, that was great.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
I know.
Well, that's key too, Kandice, is this is fun for us. And so there's times when we're in it, you guys. And so we're sharing this because this isn't like we're talking up through our experiences. You know, we're experiencing ups and downs with our own lives and our own, you name it. And when we're in it and we're talking about it with each other, because we all have the three of us have established no boundaries, pretty much. I mean, and it's a comfortable space that we can share with that and each other. But I'm sharing this because I know there's people that are watching this that are like, I don't have that.
I know. Yeah.
You know, and speak up, sister.
I was thinking about that earlier, and what I wrote down was you can use even people like an astrologer that you like. You can syncopate. That's another word that came up when I was listening to one of you. You can syncopate with anything that you love. It's like everyone is an avenue. Everyone is a door that you can open if it's open to you, and it doesn't even need to be such an intimate relationship. You can use someone that you see as a role model to model yourself after and with, and you can ping off of anything, really. So, you know, we're just showing, if you're really present, actually, wherever you turn, the reality will ping back to you in whatever form is presenting.
That's great. I love that. I mean, if that's true, because I mean, you're out driving and reality showing you all sorts of things as you're driving, and just that's how that works. And even I'm thinking of working with a stone, right? People work with crystals for kind of this very reason. They have a stone and they're calibrating with the energy of the stone as a reference point of like, because that stone's bringing, it can be anything. Doesn't have to be.
Yeah. So it starts with one, you, and then it starts with another, just anything external. So first you work with one, and then you work with two, and then you can work with three. So I feel like we're just kind of game to do the three, right? We're like, let's do it.
And there's something when, like, if I think of 4, all of a sudden it breaks this mathematical equation that we've got going on somehow.
Yeah. You almost need 5.
Yes. Yeah.
Or 6, 5 or 6.
Yep. Definitely.
I don't know why. I had got on a spin. I'll have to kind of figure it out and share later, because I'm not sure why I just went into that field. But I did want to share too, when I was drawing out the pyramid, you know, if we've got these 3, it's not just 3 sides, right? But it's that prism like you had drawn. So it's like I'm in front, back, side. So we have, you know what I mean? Like we're looking out each of those. So it's a multi-dimensional way of looking at things. And it then creates that prism that you were talking about, Kandice. But I just felt like it needed more depth, or it's like, again, it's that dimension.
And
bringing
my
this
head crack.
Yeah. There's something
right
there, right?
Yeah.
Like we're exploring. So the other thing too is the validity of this is it's playful and fun for us, and it helps me in so many ways. But it's almost like we're talking to ourselves. We just share a message with each other, and we're musing. And then you guys ping back what's going on and all of these synchronicities come through. And had we have not shared it with each other, we wouldn't even know. We wouldn't even put these things together. And I'm sharing this with anybody watching this because I have learned over the last few years, especially, that I will get these pings, and it's like, if I ignore them, later on it'll show up and I'm like, oh, that's why I should. And so it could be a conversation with someone. It could be if I'm doing a session with not even a session, if I'm having a conversation with someone that I've never met, and all of a sudden I hear white flowers, or I see white flowers. It used to be, I would just be like, okay, that's weird. Now I'm like, I don't know why, but I'm thinking of white flowers right now. Does that ring, does that do anything, or I just say it because that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm just encouraging everybody to kind of get outside of the box of thinking that it has to look or sound a certain way and it has to be with just one person. And we're not projecting on each other though. I think that's important. Like we're just allowing this unfoldment. I don't know how to go into that a little bit deeper. Maybe Jess, you can.
I think it comes back to the intention of why we came together, even though we never were like, this is the intention of our portal. It wasn't like that, but it's like this unspoken intention that we all have of just like unconditional acceptance and love for each other, as when no one's trying to change anybody, kind of a thing. And so that, I feel like the intention of whatever you're entering into the relationship with, it's important, because if there's any like distortion there of like trying to change something, or it's not going to allow the unfolding or the flow.
Right.
That makes sense.
It holds it back.
And it cuts it off. At least that's what I've experienced anyway.
And that's where those, when we say we're pinging off of anything, it's not necessarily being like, I might bring it up, but then I use my discernment. Sometimes I know if I'm working with someone, I don't need to bring it up because they're not necessarily in that space that I'm in. Mm-hmm. So that's where this type of container is very safe. Mm-hmm. And this is something too, I feel like I'm trying to get to a deeper level here to explain for anybody watching. I think the intention with us sharing this with the audience of whoever's tuning in to us, our fellow humans, brothers and sisters, is that we're all establishing a new way of communication with one another, with our environment. And I'm not talking, this is language in a completely different way of communicating. And it is, I want to go back to the timelessness, because like you might use your body awareness, Jess, because you're big on embodiment. And then Kandice, you're utilizing your connection with being a mother and having this connection with the gene keys and your own intuitive process and yours too. And then I'm bringing forward my writing or whatever it is, which all of us kind of do. But my point is that we're utilizing everything at our fingertips in such a way that it's not, it's quantum. It has a ripple effect. And this is the way of it. Like I'm thinking of Mandalorian now, but like, this is the way that it doesn't have to be boxed into this particular category.
Yeah.
Because time has changed.
Mm-hmm.
So how we operate within that dynamic has changed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what we're trying to do with this video is just our first effort to kind of explain the new way of interacting with our fellow brothers and sisters. To establish clarity and knowing thyself more and more and more.
Yeah.
So much.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So I always say, and I'm sure many other people say this, sharing is caring. And my daughter says it to me all the time. I'm giving this to you, sharing is caring. And it's really actually set into her foundation. She's always like shoving food in my mouth. Like she thinks of me. Sharing is caring. So she's just like here. And that's kind of why we're doing this, right? If we're doing it, we do it with each other. And we have something that we've created that's really valuable. And we're going to share it.
Ray just got home. I'm going to pause.
Oh, yeah.
So we're just kind of doing this spontaneously, you guys, as best we can. And we have to, Jess has to run right now. To be continued, Jess.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
We will do our best to carry on.
Oh, I think you'll be just fine. one of the legs of the stool is going, but you'll be fine.
The stool must go on.
Right.
Oh no.
Don't go with that.
No, don't go.
Okay. Love you guys.
Ah.
Mwah.
Oh, that's funny. My brain just went into 10 different places.
Ooh.
So what kind of just happened just as a little, like, we have this vortex that gets created and literally things get magnetized into our reality. And it really is what we're focusing on. I think that could be a powerful thing to kind of talk about too, because it's like what Jess was saying. I love the fact that she started talking about the intention, because it's like we put our intention to something and we're all talking about a particular subject. And wouldn't you say that it just all of a sudden it's like, there it is, there it is, there it is, there, like the peacock.
That's the cauldron, right? Like we're literally creating a cauldron, and it, it's magnetic. It's also something that we can see through, right? We look into the cauldron that we create and we see. Not only, we're seeing, we're using it to see, or we're using it as nutrients, or we're creating, and yeah, it's just, there's so many different potentials to utilize through our human technology. It's really, we're using our human natural born technology to different capacities.
Yeah.
And that's something that sort of started to happen organically, that I think happens when people gather intentionally. Mm-hmm. And it is sort of, it can be a religious experience for some, if you, depending on your lens of view, it could be a religious experience. It could be a mystical experience. It could be a magical experience, or an inspiring experience, or a supportive experience, or And
I also think it's, like you were just saying a second ago when I had to pause, but you are the magic. So it's really just you magnifying, radiating, attracting, electrically connecting to, and I was drawing antennae. So this is all what you drew earlier.
Ooh, yeah.
It just increases our antennae, and then we bounce that back into the network, right?
Which is also the rabbit ears. It makes me think of the antenna off those old televisions. It's like we each have our antenna. We put them together. So the magic, it's tapping into your own magic, right? And the word magic comes from imagination, I-magi, which is that peacock. It is that key, the key of either confusion, imagination, or illumination. So we are becoming self-illuminated magicians, or magi, which is wisdom keepers, or wisdom containers. And then, what was said when we were off recording was, you learn how to tap into this way of being and perceiving and exchanging with the universe, with reality. And you have magical occurrences or synchronistic events popping up all over the place. So we were just saying, like, we don't have to record them all anymore. We can just let it go, because we know there's going to be more magic. We know there's going to be another occurrence. It's abundant now. First there was one plant, now there's many, and it's like the whole experience is exploding. And then you recognize it's because in your essence, you are magical. You are a magical creation, part of creation. And as you open to the magic that you are, it is expressing itself to you infinitely, because you've opened that lens of seeing
Oh my goodness. So this is a perfect example. So I want to bring up my friend Trinity Trio again. We spoke earlier and she was talking all about how her lens had expanded, and I hope I'm okay. But it's funny because, and so here we go. And so that pings, now you're talking about that. And the synchronicity with, for me, horse had come in and so this is a perfect example of just by us having this conversation is bringing more awareness. I'm inviting whoever is tuning in to think about that. Like, ooh, if I had a conversation about the word lens with somebody, it's like all of a sudden these things start pinging. And like you said, in the beginning, I have a tendency to be very analytical and I like to hang on to it and figure it out. But then I realized as we created this group specifically, and also, with certain circumstances and people, those floodgates open, that lens opens, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, where do I look? Everything is talking with me, right?
Oh God.
Because even as you were talking about the peacock, I'm like, wait, we didn't cover 48. We didn't cover grasshopper. We didn't cover, because it's all now.
I gotta share the vision that I had. I had a vision of you standing there with your pen and your paper as the floodgates opened. And it's just like, you just get hit with this wave of water and you're just like trying to write it all down, but like, you can't, right? You can't, this, that you could spend the rest of your life, and you probably will, like we probably will, trying to write it down. We're going to.
I've already tried for like the last 5 years. I have notebook after notebook after notebook, and it has not stopped. And I'm like, what?
It's never going to stop. It'll never stop.
We're constantly getting to know ourselves. And there's more, and there's more, and there's more, and it's infinite. And that's a concept. It's like, we aren't necessarily able to, it's our consciousness at this level, which we just, there's no way and why would you want to? We came here, from my perspective, and I think you agree, is like to experience things in certain ways, to have certain experiences. And if those floodgates are open all the time, which we have it all the time, you have to ground it, and we're grounding it into this reality now, even though it might be from another dimension or another time period of time or another experience. We're experiencing it in a different way. And so that it's if we can keep it light, we can keep it fun. I just get that vision of like all this, like a tidal wave, and the notebook just like, what do you and so this is where you use I love bringing it back to the gene keys, or some people use tarot cards, or some people use crystals or whatever. You bring it back to that to kind of ground it and anchor it into now.
It's a container, or it's a way of harnessing the infinite power, because the power is infinite. And if you have nowhere for it to go, let me try to work this out. If you have no framework for it, right, it just is just like, you almost fry out. Or it's, I keep getting that vision of that powder guy in that movie where he's in the lightning, and it's just like, totally. It's good to create channels and structures to bring it through. But then it's also, we also have to be careful of those channels and structures, because they can be limiting. So right now it's good sometimes to use limitation. And that's another thing that I like to talk about, because, people will be like, oh, that's a limiting view, that's a limiting belief. And it's like, good, play with that. Sometimes it's good to try on those limiting beliefs. Sometimes you need a good limiting belief.
Throw it in the mix.
Right? Try that on, see how that feels, see where that gets you, right? And then you're like, oh, okay. Then there's expansion, but then there's like too much expansion, too much of this unlimited, where you're just like, you know, so it's like, okay, reel that back in. So it's finding the balance between the infinite and the finite.
I just went into 10 different words, of course, but I'm going to try to just keep it grounded a little bit. I am very familiar with going into that, like getting lost in it, and exploring these different perspectives. I had this really weird thought the other day, and I'm going to try to think about how to formulate it, and so it doesn't come out as, wait a minute, which one? Which day? Every day I had really weird thoughts. But it's almost like I had this idea. I was listening to somebody, and it was about a galactic presentation of let's say in a land far away, long time ago, this happened that put us into this region of space. And so there was this, and so there's a lot of attachments and associations that we have, like you said, let's go there, let's explore that aspect sometimes. And I had this thought that popped into my head, and I'm like, well, shoot, if it weren't for those bad guys doing what they did, we wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I mean, I wouldn't have my family. I wouldn't have my husband. I wouldn't, like, this is beautiful. So I realize that a lot of people are like, bad this, and, you know, don't go there. And it's like, but wait a minute, those beings, let's just go galactic for a minute, that created this polarity, let's say, that brought us to this timeline. And I think you kind of fill in the blanks with whatever. I was just like, wow, all of a sudden I had this gratitude. Like, wow, I'm really grateful that I'm here right now. And I know that there's been some crazy things that have happened over my lifetime and over all these eons of time and all of that. But ultimately, it's infinite. It's like a constant experience of the infinite in this moment as we find more of the juiciness of living. I mean, I kind of went a little.
No, sorry that I laughed there. Like, that was so beautiful. And I loved the way, like, I laughed because I was saying, like, find the balance between the finite and the infinite. And you just did with gratitude.
Yeah.
Like, gratitude is the balance and the equalizer. And I feel like we're walking in that way. Like, we are on this tightrope. We got that big balancing stick, right? And we're grateful for every step. And that is this walk that we do as we're going to these different heights, and we're testing out our ability to hold our core and center, right? We're grounded actually into our balance, into the very center of our being.
Yeah.
And we're just taking every step in trust and learning to walk that fine line between too much and not enough.
Yeah.
As we're interpreting, as we're sending and receiving, right? We're in the center, and we're sending and receiving so much information as this sort of unlimited energy moves through our vessels, and we're harnessing it and extrapolating it all at the same time as upholding our structure in our psyches and our emotional bodies and our feeling bodies. Like, we're doing a lot. Just, you know,
I'm hearing strap in, because this is only as we explore consciousness and reality in this way, and we begin, because we have a lot of as my husband likes to call them, abstract, time doesn't exist the way we think it does, and time is changing, and how we're going into the fifth dimension, all of these kind of abstract ideas. But what I'm recognizing through our relationship, and with Jess, the three of us, and with other, you know, connections that I've made
Yeah.
in friendships, and how that's kind of, whoops, bring it back into focus, Carrie. What's happened is that is part of how we're operating, how we're communicating this way, is creating that balance. It's creating, the more we can stay present and be in that space, we're creating that reality. We're finding a new way to interact with it, essentially.
I love that. I love that so much. And it's like, it kind of started out with you and I doing that together. We also had another large group that we did it with, which we found like it was hard. It wasn't sustainable to have such a large group.
Yeah.
So then now there's 3. And it's like being able, and it doesn't have to be this way. This is just how we're experiencing it, right? But it's like sustaining that energy charge and exchange in the circuitry that we felt, how to have that be a sustainable thing, and to also, you know, learn from it. Like we've created this little systems processor with us, with our circuitry, with, you know, that happen to be people.
Yeah.
The people that we are you know, our real human organic system processor. And people do this all over the world. Brilliant minds come together to create inventions and things. And so, you know, we are intuitive beings. So we've come together with our intuition as like the ignition, right? And we also use our minds and everything too, of course. But like, it's like, it's interesting how, and you know, this has been happening for a long time on this planet, right? People get drawn together to build certain things, to make certain things. So I feel like we're drawn together to work on communications, but we're doing it in a very abstract, unique way, working with words, working with energy, working with symbolism, working with mathematics and science and metaphysics, and also deep esoteric wisdom, and you know, like we're kind of pooling together.
One thing I will say, I wanted to add that Jess brings to the table, because we have a very similar style. Jess has this very grounding energy, and she brings in the physical, like relationships, friendships, life experiences, movement, and body work through, you know, so that brings that perspective. And it, for me, it can help ground me into, oh, how am I applying that in my real life? Because I was just off on Andromeda a minute ago, you know, like, and that's important because we're not on Andromeda. Sometimes we are. I don't know if you noticed. Like,
I love that.
You know, like kind of important to, and we are in this skin suit technology, and we are operating at this level. So how can we communicate at this level while tuning into all of those other places and spaces? And so we're utilizing one another. And this is, I'm speaking for the collective, but this is also a conversation, obviously, that you and I are having. And one thing I wanted to add to what you're saying was, I think Dan Winter talks about this and it's not just him, he just brings awareness to it because he's one of my people that I admire and I listen to. But our song lines, we're creating like what the Aborigines taught, you know, and the indigenous people, and then these ancient civilizations probably did as well before we had this. It's like a connection to our ancestry, but we're doing it in the now moment with each other. Yeah. And it's creating those song lines.
I love that. That's, yes. Yeah. And if you were speaking to one of our ancestors at that time, they'd say, how do you do it? How do you sing songs through the song lines? How do you communicate miles and miles away? And they'd they wouldn't know how to tell you because they just do it.
Mhm.
So it's like, and we're trying to share and explain how we do something that we just do, right? Like
Yes.
we've just come together and we're doing this thing and we're like, how do we do this? How do we
explain
talk
what we're
about
doing?
how we do this?
This is our attempt at explaining and sharing
Yeah.
how this interaction works for us. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot more. It's ongoing. We're still discovering and learning as we go too. But you're right. Part of what my path is and your path is and Jess's path is communication. So it's like we're teachers in our own way. We're all teachers. Some people are really in tune with crystals and the energy of crystals and how to utilize that as a healing tool. We're, for whatever reason, it's the communication. And I like the fact, we don't always do it in a normal way because there is no definitive, finite way of explanation of how we can form, and I'm saying words, but as I say form words, it's alpha, it's the alpha beta, it's the, and I'm not just talking about linguistics here, although I loved this is communication, human to human,
Waves.
Right? Through the waves.
Words are containers for energy waves. They're literally data, information that we have made into structures to relate, to relay, to interlay meanings to one another. They're agreements, a creed, right? They're creeds between us and bonds that we have formed, that we have upheld through time.
You're saying creed. I was hearing Creedence Clearwater, and then I was seeing the revival of the creed of the old way of communicating, which is the new way, which is not old because it's new and it's of the future, me and you, of us combining these ways of. So I'm also seeing something like building this. So we're creating this. And so we're creating our reality, and we're recognizing that our reality is also working with us. It is us. It's like,
yeah, exactly. We're extensions of existence.
Yeah.
And we're creating, we are knowing our own value intrinsically, right? Know thyself, which is to know your value, which is to know your power, which is to access your power, which is to know how to harmoniously wield your power. And as I say wield, I'm also meaning like weld, like the bonds that you're choosing to form and the bonds that you're choosing to break, and what are you upholding? How are you conducting, right? And conducting is conducting that power in which you are. And how do you conduct that? You conduct that in how you hold yourself. You conduct that in how you speak. That is how you conduct.
Yeah.
So we're playing with conduction, with energy, with exchange, with movement of meaning. And you and I love to do that through sound and wordplay as we're intercepting energy waves, really, right? Like we're...
And then Jess will ask a question.
And yes,
it's
yes,
like, whoa.
Yes.
So it's like molecular bondology. Like,
oh my God.
All of a sudden we're like, oh, let's go that direction. Which brings us back into the container, because being able to ask a good question is a way for us to refine what it is that we're trying to see, feel, understand, interact with.
Yeah, I almost see her like a crystal ball. Like she's this rock, but she's not like just a rock, like she's this.
She's an island.
She's an island. Well, I was going to say she's a rolling stone. But like she is this really grounded earth goddess structure that you and I've got that hyper fairy energy that I'm like going around, right? And you are also like this kaleidoscope energy of electricity So we ground into her. She'll give us a focus and we're like, yeah, let's dive into that. Like, let's go. And it helps us go into a more of a narrow funnel, which is more productive for us sometimes. Because you and I can just go and then we're like, oh, where are we?
Wait a minute.
Where did we go? We're gone.
There she went. I'm not sure how to get back
gone.
there. And as
It's
we're
fun. We like
it's fun,
it.
but it isn't sustainable.
No.
And part of what we're trying to kind of establish is sustainability, the ability to sustain this higher frequency, these incoming energies, these downloads of information. My friend earlier was saying, she said, you know, I get these massive downloads and it's so much that I'm not able to even write it down like what you were describing. And then she goes, and then I kind of forget about it. And we didn't really get to go into much more detail, but I think it's relevant for this conversation, which is ironic that we just had it before this interaction, another synchronicity, is that, you know, sometimes in order to ground it in, we have to let it go.
Yeah.
We have to let it go and recognize that, you know, going back to my long range forecasting, that isn't necessary. I mean, it's great at times and it can be a very useful tool, but ultimately, how can I bring it back into, you know, I'll do a little bit of that, but then I have to say, okay, where that could change because of these other probabilities, because we are creating now.
Oh, that just really pinged with the Gene Key 5 for me for some reason. It's like, you have to really trust in and have that patience, because when you get something that is so massive, like you do, right? And it's out there in a sense, but really actually it's still in here and it hasn't materialized yet. It's still within the system. It's like almost like you're predicting a birth. You're like, this energy is going to be born in this form. I can see it, but it's still gestating. So you've got
that's a really good description of
just like, yeah,
what we're creating as a humanity. Oh my gosh, that was beautiful. Yeah. So it gives, it brings us back into what we're focusing on too.
Yeah.
Back to intention, which is what the beginning of this conversation kind of what Jess was saying.
Seeds, right? And planting seeds. And it makes me think of the gestating mother in 9 months of gestation and holding that dream or seed or intention that you're nurturing within yourself for that time, and trust that you're going to get a return on it, aka it's going to be birthed. You know, like it's just, you're allowing this process, you're trusting life has it. You just have to nurture moment by moment, take care of yourself, feed yourself, be in the now, and something will be born. So you get that information. Okay, you know, you're gestating, and then you just have to, right? Then you take care and then you'll see it. So I feel like that's kind of a message for you actually right now, and probably for a lot of other people, but just because you get a preview of something and then you have to almost like sit on it like an egg and incubate.
I know. I had that. I did a call in with Andrew Bart. I was telling you, I did a call in with Andrew Bart. Who's another great teacher that I've listened to over the years. And Andrew said, sometimes we get messages and they're not for people aren't ready. Not that they're not ready for them. It's too far ahead of your time. And this brings us back to timelessness.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, and I feel like we can keep going. I know we have to kind of close up. So we'll do this to be continued as always. This is infinite. But it's almost like there are people out there that are like, okay, well, when, or it goes into so many different topics, because ultimately it is tying together these different pieces of our experiences and then applying them, see how they're applicable for the now, but also recognizing that there's dessert down the road too. So we have to have our nutrition so that we can sustain ourselves to get to the dessert. Otherwise, we can get spun out, or we can not process. It's like I just heard somebody saying, you know, taking pictures. Like if you're constantly taking pictures of something, you're not necessarily in the now moment. So that used to be me. Me too.
That used to be me. And I recognize that I've really stopped taking pictures lately. I
Yeah.
take a few, but I'm really in the moment.
Yeah.
And that kind of corresponds with us bringing Jess in. It really corresponds with actually, you know, us connecting with Jess. I feel like I'm outside more. I'm way more in my present body, which is super cool to see that synchronicity with her entering into a more constant participant in our lives, right?
Totally. Yeah, it's
And then I don't another message that came through was sometimes we're making something that we're not going to be here to enjoy. Like sometimes we're planting seeds that we won't literally even see them. We're just trusting that, you know, like it could be for another generation. Some of the stuff that we're coming in and hardwiring into the human consciousness, we may not see ripen. And I personally feel that, and this is my own opinion, a lot of people that I've heard that I listen to really jump the gun because they are seeing way far out. And I'm just kind of like, you know, I'm like, well, I'm here right now. This is what we're doing right now. This is what is in front of us right now.
yeah.
We keep sowing those seeds of the future in the now. And if we see them, we see them. If we see them grow, great. But we're still going to keep seeding them. We're still going to keep gardening and tending to the now moment. That's the best that we can do.
Yeah. And everybody's in a tending different plants in their garden.
Yep. Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
some people have a mystical garden and some people have just hot peppers. That's all they're tending to. I mean, it's just
awesome.
Oh, that just took me into a whole other spin, but I'll share that with you later. But I think we probably should wrap it up.
Yeah,
and to be continued. And there'll be more of this. We've got to do this when we can more often, because it really does. You guys, before we got on this call, I was like, I don't know if I can make it. I'm tired. And now I'm like, ring. You know, also we're all doing the best that we can. And, you know, we may have, it's difficult to maintain all relationships and all things going on in our lives. And we don't always have the time to sometimes create these types of relationships. I mean, this is what I've got. And it's like I want to just end on this note because it's important. I think we talked about this the other day with the bigger group, or when I'm interacting with a lot of other people, what happens is it's not sustainable for me personally. It might be sustainable for other people, and that's their gift. For me, I have to kind of tend my own garden and water my plants. Like we're using that as you know, since you're really gardening so much, that's coming into my awareness is much more of a metaphor, but also very important. When I'm worrying about all these other realities or what people are saying, or there's this pull of energy and it kind of gets leaked out, and I'm not then 100% available for people that I'm working with, for my family, for myself, my husband, whatever it might be. And so I find that it's important for us to kind of recognize that we don't have to necessarily reach out and communicate with everyone or do everything. Like you said, sometimes, you know, projecting way in the future, that also includes energetically spreading out into all things that may not be what we need to do. And for myself, I have to hone in and kind of rein it back in and keep it small in order to go big.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
I like that. That kind of reminds me of the best way to speed up is to slow down, is to really slow right down and get super intentional about everything you're doing. Because when you go too fast, you make mistakes and then you're actually costing yourself time. So the best way to speed up is to slow down. And the best way to do your best work is to get very intentional about your garden. So I'm seeing you're understanding the boundaries of your own garden, and you're tending to it. You're not going to other gardens and like watering all these other gardens, and then your own starts to die and gets neglected. Right.
And I did that for a while. A lot of us do that.
And we're like, whoa, I watered all these other plants outside, and then I came back to my own garden and everything's dying, and I don't know why. That's not sustainable. So the best thing you can do is water your own garden.
Yeah.
Tend to your own garden, right?
Yeah. So we'll go into more spins on that, but thank you so much for tuning in, you guys, whoever's made it to this point in the video. We really appreciate you guys. And we know it's a lot right now. We didn't even get to all that, but we'll talk about that another time. So thank you, Kandice, and thank you, Jess.
Yay.
To be continued. Mwah. I'm gonna hit end meeting for all. I'll message you.